Do we really need another list of 10 tools to learn French? I would say we do not. But are we making the most of the tools that we're currently using? Now that is a better question. It is said that we all have different learning styles. But researchers have shown that there's a bigger factor as it relates to learning. And this is something called WIFM. What's in it for me, as in the learner. As it relates to French, this boils down to the objective, the reason why you decided to start learning French in the first place. Quel est l'objectif? Pourquoi? Pourquoi? But we will dig deeper into the why in another video. For today, we're going to be looking at the plethora of tools and resources that are available to French learners. And more specifically, we're going to be looking at my personal buffet that I feast at on a daily basis or over time. More importantly, I want to also tell you how I use these tools and how they interact with each other to form a comprehensive system. Number one, formal classes. I find formal classes to be very, very effective for a number of different reasons. The first reason why I find formal classes to be effective is that if you are a complete beginner, it gives you some fundamentals. It lays down the groundwork for you and gives you some amount of direction as it relates to how to tackle your learning. It is by no means mandatory, but I personally find it useful. The second reason is, if you're not a complete beginner, most courses often require you to take some form of placement test. That will give you an idea of where you are in the language learning process, which is oftentimes not exactly where you thought you really were. The last reason why I find formal classes useful is because it also provides you with a sense of community, okay? Number two, apps and or games. Yes, you guessed it. I am a Duolingo user and I'm very comfortable in saying that. There's no one way that is going to give you everything that you need. Some of the reasons why I find Duolingo very, very useful in terms of language learning, and in this case we're talking specifically about French, is that it provides you with a low barrier to entry to get in the process of learning the language. It also gives you an opportunity to engage in bite-sized chunks on a daily basis. It helps you to remain motivated with the gamification system and of course the incentives that they do offer. Cautionary tale though, you want to make sure that you don't get caught up in the XPs over the lessons. And of course, you should never ever think that this is going to be able to give you all that you need as it relates to learning French. This will never happen. Lastly, I could probably say most importantly, I believe it was Albert Einstein who mentioned something about compounding being the eighth wonder of the world. It also applies to Duolingo. What do I mean by the compounding? Very simply this. 15-minute sessions will not deliver what the 1 hour sessions will deliver. The repetition that happens over the period of 1 hour will cause greater retention, which will obviously help in the overall learning of the concepts. Number three, YouTube. Of course, this is the 1,000-pound gorilla that we all know about, and we all agree that there is an infinite supply of content on YouTube. But I'm sure that you will find your favorite, just as I have found my favorites. I have found a couple of channels that do deliver the goods as it relates to specific lessons that I'm looking for and or my podcast fix. Of course, during those podcast fix, I get to listen to the sound and rhythm and flow of the language. I also get to pick up on a lot of cool phrases and cool terms that I probably would not have learned in a formal setting. This helps me big time with just the general acquisition of the language. This also affords me an opportunity to listen to a multiplicity of accents. Number four, reading. Whether it's websites, books, blogs, articles, emails, whatever you choose, this is a very effective tool or method of learning French. I will admit it's definitely not one of my favorites, but I do realize how effective it is, and so because of that, I make sure to get in even a little bit. Fortunately for me, I do receive emails in both languages, French and English. So if I do have a little extra time, I will dig into the French section of my email. There are times when I don't have enough time, but if I do have enough time, I will read the French version. Sometimes a bit of back and forth is required, but if I have enough time, it's worth it. And so I do that from time to time. I live in Canada, where the official government websites also are easily convertible between English and French. And so if I'm looking for small chunks of data, I will also read from the French section. This, ladies and gentlemen, helps you tremendously with your spelling and your writing skills, which, depending on what your purpose is for learning French, can be very, very, very useful. Number 5, Instagram. Instead of going on a social media fast to try to be productive or try to be less distracted, what I simply do is I manipulate the algorithm to sprinkle French content throughout my feed. How do I do that, you ask? I follow a bunch of French people who are providing content in subject matters that I'm interested in. I do follow some persons who teach French, but outside of that, I follow a lot of others who are just French people who are doing content in areas that I'm interested in. So I get to benefit from learning lots and lots of cool phrases, slangs, culture, while learning about the content that I'm interested in. Number 6, Netflix. Just like millions of others around the world, I do enjoy being thrilled by a Netflix film or series. I also will click that next episode tab when I see an amazing cliffhanger that makes you just want to see what's going to happen next. However, what I also do is I always use captions. And I always put my captions in French. That way I'm able to passively, this is by no means an intentional approach to learn, but during those times, I put my subconscious to passively work in the background and continue to acquire as I watch and enjoy my series or my episode or my movie. That being said, though, I do have an intentional approach, and in that approach, I choose something that I really enjoy. My favorite series for this is The Parisian Agency. The Parisian Agency is basically a family-owned business in the real estate industry that's based in France. The essence of it is that they do speak a great deal of French language. You learn a lot about culture. You learn a lot about abbreviations. You learn a lot about just about every different aspect of life based on the nature of their business, based on the nature of their clientele, and that I really enjoy. I really love real estate, I love business, I love family, and it's all wrapped up in this one package and delivered. This I find very useful. How did I start this? I actually started out by watching the episodes in French, as I always do, but I did put my caption in this case in English in the beginning when I wasn't able to understand clearly what the French dialogues were. After I got an idea of what the series was about and I understood the conversations, what I did was I switched my caption to French so that I can follow the audio and the reading simultaneously. And over time that became more smooth and I learned a whole lot from just doing that, and that I found to be extremely useful. Number 7, meetups. A phenomenal resource. This is basically a place where people with similar interests come together and meet online or in person and spend time on that particular subject area that they're interested in. You name it, you can have it. So in this case, French. Meet online, talk about French. Meet in person, talk about French. Practice French. More so to practice. Now, the last few that I've spoken about were all consumption based. Meetups is more output based. This is where you get to practice all that you have been learning from the other sources. Personally, for French, we do meet online and we do meet with a lot of people from all over the world. So this is an opportunity not just to practice the language French, but to meet with people from all over the world that could potentially become friends. I find this to be a very effective way to practice and gain confidence, because this is generally a fun and vulnerable environment where everyone is simply trying to grow. Now, I get it. small talks and group chats are not for everyone. And if that's the situation for you, rest assured, there's another way. Enter My Language Exchange. My Language Exchange is another online where you get to choose from thousands of potential language partners who are also learning languages across the world. For a measly amount of money, you can create a gold membership. And this allows you to sift through thousands of profile of potential language partners and determine who you would like to seek out a partnership with. Of course, we do know that with pretty much all online platforms, there are associated or potential risks that we have to navigate. But with some amount of diligence and attention and awareness, you can definitely sift through any one of these platforms and find great partners to practice with and learn and grow together. Personally, I've found a couple of partners that I have been practicing with for several months now, and it's been phenomenal. Phenomenal. Number 9, music. Music, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely a must-do. It's a very low-hanging fruit. But the beautiful thing about music is that music tends to be very catchy. Music tends to have informal language structure, which is different from what you are going to learn in textbooks or in classes. Music tends to give you the ability to catch on to a lot of sounds. The most recent learning experience that I have had from a song is that I actually found the song on Instagram. Someone was singing the song. It was catchy, so it caught my attention. And so I went and looked for the original version on YouTube. I printed out the lyrics on Google. And of course, I listened to the song while following along with the lyrics so that I could match the sounds to the words and I could understand and follow. And the more I followed, the more I learned. I did this a couple of times and picked up a bunch of phrases and cultural expressions as well, which I found to be very, very, very useful. Very low hanging fruit, very effective results. And finally, last but most definitely not least, is radio, which is also another low hanging fruit. If you find yourself in your vehicle or in any form of commute, I say commute because that's where I use it primarily. Of course, if you have another situation where you can use your radio without interfering with anyone else, then definitely by all means go for it. But again, it's a low barrier to entry. It's a very passive approach, so you can put your car on the French station and just listen. You can listen to news, you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to whatever kind of emission you want to listen to. But there is a ton of value from that. And a lot of these passive approaches lend themselves to more of the acquisition aspect of the language, which can be argued is a much bigger component of the overall learning process. I know that it can be differentiated as it relates to learning versus acquisition. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are the tools/resources that I have been using for quite some time now. They have been absolutely beneficial to me. If there are any of these that you want to know a little bit more about and how I use them, then definitely comment below and ask any question that you have regarding these. I've made it fairly simple, kept it very short as it relates to how I use these and how they support each other. Of course, overall, from the list that I've covered, you would realize that there are active learning process, which is the classes. And of course, those can be done whether online or in person. There are passive approaches where we watch movies and just have the subtitles, or rather the caption running in the background so that we can pick up on some subtle lessons as we go along. We have stuff like podcasts, YouTube videos, YouTube lessons, again, more deliberate, but lots and lots of passive operation happening, which makes the process much easier so that you can keep doing it. We've got things like Duolingo, which again is a low barrier to entry. Anyone can do it, and it also helps you to maintain that habit of remaining engaged with the language. And then we have the other ones where you get to meet with other people and interact and build a community, be a part of a bigger group, and have some amount of accountability built into your overall language learning experience. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching this video. Those were my tools/resources that I primarily use for my language learning. It has been an exciting adventure so far, and I just want to invite you to come along. I want to encourage you, if you have stopped learning, or if you've stopped practicing rather, to get back on board. It's a new year that's about to begin. Make it a part of your New Year's plan to get back in the language if you have taken a break. And if you use any of these resources or tools, comment below which one do you use. Merci d'avoir regardé cette vidéo et jusqu'à la prochaine fois. À bientôt.